This is Joe with US Sander, and in this video I'm going to show you how to put the AE28RK old style brush kit in an edger. Inside the kit you have a set of brushes, two of the long pins, two short pins, two brush holders, two insulating washers, two springs, two retainer clips and washers, two screws with washers to hold the brushes in, and two little screws for the wires. The first thing you're going to want to do is dry fit the parts. Make sure that the pin will go through the brush holder with enough room for the washer and clip. In this case, the ears on this brush holder are slightly bent, so we'll need to tweak those back into position to get this to line up. That goes through good. Our washer will go on the pin first, and then the brush holder, and then the brass washer, and lastly the clip. We just need to make sure that there will be enough room to get that clip on when it's done, which it looks like everything here works correctly. If you have too much play here or not enough, you may need to press this pin through the plastic a little bit more or less. To begin the process, you want to make sure your edger is unplugged. Remove your top cover. Then remove the 4 screws that hold the bottom housing to the top housing, and remove this top housing. Once you've got the top off, you need to remove the old brush holders. So pull these 2 screws out and push this brush holder down. It's easier to install these if you remove the field, but you can do it without removing that field. Your long pin goes in this hole, and the short pin goes in that hole. You want to put your insulating washer on first. The brush holder will go this way. This ear bottoms out against the short pin when it's in operation. Start that brush holder on, and then you want to use a punch and hammer to lightly tap that pin into place. As you're driving the pin in, you want to be careful that you don't drive the steel out of the plastic bushing. If you do, use a pry bar to gently pry that pin back up into the plastic bushing. You typically want to drive that pin in until it just sticks out the bottom. That plastic bushing should be sticking out less than 1/8 of an inch. With both pins installed, we need to put the spring on before we can put the clip on the bottom to hold that brush holder. The spring will go around the brush holder like so. That way this ear pushes against the brush holder, the other ear will be brought back around to fall into the groove in the short pin. With the spring and brush holder in place, we flip this upside down, and now we need to reach inside there and put the brass washer and the clip on that long pin to hold that brush holder in place. Once that's done, we can take and pull this second ear on the spring around and clip it into place on that short pin. And that's installed the way it's supposed to be. This wire needs to connect to that small hole, so we'll need to cut this end off and put an eyelet on it. Now use the small screws provided in the kit to fasten that wire to the brush holder. Once that's attached, make sure the brush holder still moves freely and that wire isn't binding it in any way. Now we do the same thing for the second brush holder. Now that we've got both brush holders installed, we want to put the brushes in it. The long edge goes out, away from the brush holder. Use the oval washer and the longer screw, which fits in the notch and screws into the brush holder. Now we're ready to put this top housing back on. Make sure your baffle plates in between the fans on the armature are in place. If need be, you can put a little piece of tape on either side to prevent them from moving around. You want to pull your brushes out with one with each hand and carefully set that down over top. You may need to tap this down with a soft base hammer. With this reattached, we now need to adjust our brushes to make sure they both line up properly. In this case, the brushes are riding high. We want them to set down at least a 1/16 more like an 1/8 inch from the top of the armature. So we're going to have to drive this pin in just a little bit to push that brush down. With that done, make sure they still move freely. Next, we line up the groove in the armature with the edge of the brush on one side, and then we check the other side to see if it lines up. In this case, this brush is sitting a little bit farther out on the armature than the other side. So what we want to do is check which brush most closely matches the armature, the curve on the brush matching the curve in the armature, and that's the one that we're going to leave, and the other one will be adjusted. So I set this one lined up with the groove. There's a slight gap here, so this one will need to be twisted so that that brush comes out to line up with that groove properly. To do that, you want to remove this brush and you'll need to use a pair of pliers to twist this. Oftentimes it'll be necessary to remove the screw that holds the brush in. Be careful you don't drop it down inside. With the second pair of pliers, you can keep this brush holder from moving by clamping the tail on that brush holder against the pin. And we want to twist this brush holder just a little bit to move that brush out. It's a little bit of trial and error to this. You'll probably have to try bending it several times. Once both brushes line up with the groove exactly the same, we're ready to run this. It's best if you have a brush seating stone. What you want to do is run this very lightly across the face of the armature where the brushes ride with the edger running. You don't want to, we're not trying to remove any material, we're just trying to deposit a little bit of this abrasive on the surface of this armature, which will then wear the brushes very slightly until they match the shape of the armature. After that, it's necessary to blow the abrasive off of the armature with a compressed air. That will remove it so it won't continue to wear your brushes. Now if all went well, your edger should be running like this one with a very thin blue line between your brush and your armature. If you have excessive arcing that continues around the armature, that usually indicates that there is a hop to the armature or you didn't align your brushes exactly correctly.